Alright guys, OpTic back again today. Hope you're all doing well and enjoying your day so far. Welcome to episode 59 of the Breaking Point podcast. We're here right before the major. Austin's having a good time. He's actually flying out this evening to the event for the first time in quite some time. That's exciting. Lion's here as well. We're going to break down all the drama of the past week in cards. It's been a pretty insane week, to be honest. The final week of qualification games, plenty of drama on the timeline, and then predict actually what's going to happen in this major, because there's a load of great storylines, and especially after the major, potentially a load of major changes. But yeah, Austin, how you doing? That was an entertaining intro, I think, all things considered. Every cam was popping off.
Doing pretty good. Doing pretty good. You know, just getting the vibes right for the major weekend.
Go, baby. Lion, you looking good? You been designing?
Oh, shit, thanks, Ryan. I'm excited for this major. Some really good matchups in round one. And these qualifying games have been pretty surprising, I think. Boston, for example, really good to see them right at the top there, looking like a top team. So yeah, exciting storylines for sure.
Boston and Toronto, baby, swapping places. Before we talk matches, I want to talk about the whole Crim 6 versus Clayster beef, because to be honest, I didn't think we would see this, but we basically did. So last weekend, as the matches were getting underway, Crim 6 comes out and says that he reckons that they talked to Havoc, potentially bringing him on to New York. He reckons that after they spoke to Havoc, he then went to kind of speak to Clay and then told Clay, like, hey, they want to drop you, basically. Now, Clay said, this is, and then they went to play Florida the next day, and Crim reckoned the vibes were chalked before they even got on, because he then theorized that Clay already kind of knew he was out of there and all this type of stuff. Now, Havoc comes back and says that's actually fake news. That's not how it went down. Clay then comes back and says, look, Porter, you're basically just spewing lies to try and paint Havoc as the bad guy. If you want to, why are you doing this? If you maybe reach out to me personally, all this type of stuff. And they have a back and forth on Twitter, which, given the fact that we're a couple of months into the year and these guys are reuniting, all this, hype about Crim and Clay getting back together, World Championship winning duo, and now 2 months into the season, Clay's no longer on the team and they're bickering on Twitter once again. It does make me wonder. It's kind of my question, but you can feel free to discuss this topic anyway I'd like to. Did Clay make a mistake agreeing to bring Crim onto this team? Obviously, it looks like he did in hindsight, but it's just Crim maybe had some other options elsewhere. Like he could have maybe gone to LAG, and I'm sure another team would have got him. He went for this squad. Clayster was happy to bring him on, and then looking back on the way these roster changes have happened, Crim has effectively just now taken control of the roster. Clay's gone and is going to be difficult to get another spot. And Clay basically had command of this roster, and probably if it had said no to Crim, would have still been in command of the roster, just even if they weren't doing well. I don't really know. It's tough to predict how things might have gone. But, I just thought about that, Austin. I don't know what you think.
Yeah, it's actually interesting to think about how their offseason could have gone differently. Like personally, I didn't think it was that big of a bad of a move. I know in one of our offseason podcasts, we were actually talking about how we didn't think that those two and then Kenny and Octane would be like a great fit on like the ARs, because they're both like so like dominant personalities that each one would have to give and take a little bit.
What about that?
Yeah, I think we nailed both of those, but yeah, it's actually funny to kind of think about how the offseason could have been different. You could have had, like, if you look back at the old New York from last year, like you kind of makes you think, what if a trio of Ace, Mac, and Hydra went into this year with Crim?
Yeah, that's interesting.
I think that would be a really good team this year, but I don't think Clay regrets that, because they've obviously had a bunch of success in the past. He probably thought they were going to have a bunch of success now, but the drama wise, like I just thought it was funny because both of those guys probably knew that one of them had to go, so they were both probably trying to angle at something, and it's kind of like, it kind of reminds me, I know this probably isn't accurate, but like F1 drivers like on the same team when they're like scrapping, like it's just like chip shots at each other, and like this is not going right. You just know one of them's going to be gone. And it seems like obviously Crim's been a little bit better this year, so he got to stick around. And I mean, it is what it is. I mean, Call of Duty's drama, so everyone loves it. I'm sure we're gonna hear at least a little bit of the story, but I don't. Was there ever beef with Havoc and Crim? Like I know I've been seeing that, but I don't really remember. Like what was the beef there?
Well, The only thing I know is that I believe that after they wanted to pick him up and they had a conversation with probably Crim, Dareal, and maybe Hydra or whoever on the team, and they spoke with Havoc in like a call, and then Havoc obviously kind of made his thoughts known, and turns out he didn't want to join anyway because of what we talked about last time. And then Crim reckons that he then went to kind of tell Clay what the deal was there, that they're planning to drop him. So
Yeah, but I've been hearing that there was beef from way before that, and that's
Oh, was there?
why there was like I think Havoc was saying he would have joined with Clay, but because Clay was the one to leave. But I don't really know. It just seems like
yeah, I know what you mean. I
kind
don't
of.
know why there was. Yeah, that's a good point actually.
And then there was like
I
the
don't know if there
random.
necessarily was beef from before, whether he just thought that like Clay's kind of mindset for how to operate the team more aligned with his than Crim did. And I think he also
Yeah.
said something like, I don't think there's any bad blood between me and Crim or something like that. I don't know. Something like that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but I think they made the
personality-wise,
right
maybe.
call. Like Brad,
It definitely seems like they did, right?
like Paul's a terrific player. It fit in there. Now Porter can actually play the main AR role. And Neptune and Hydra have found like this renewed like energy, and they're going out there doing like really good. So if they can keep up this honeymoon phase, you know, they're going to be looking pretty good going into the rest of the year. They have some points to make up, but they got more than enough time to do it.
Yeah, I felt like because Havoc wanted to bring in Kismet, it was going to be Kismet, Havoc, Clay, and Hydra. Is that the plan?
Ah,
I think so. Like
they were
that, there's
talking
no
about
way
Prezi
that's
too,
any
I
better.
think.
Yeah, I think that actually might have been. But then Hydra didn't want to
That's
play
why.
with
That's why.
Brezzy. There was
Yeah.
some mess going on.
Yeah, some French rivalry. I think honestly, either team that they went with would have been better than their current roster, well, their initial roster. But I can see why Crim and Clay wanted to play together. Like I pulled up the card I made ages ago, and it's actually ridiculous. 17 tournaments
1.82.
they played together, and they got into 13 finals and won 11. And they had a 70 and 16 series win loss. So it's like, of course, if it's not broke, don't fix it. Like come back together and try and go again. But yeah, clearly this time it didn't work, and I don't think we'll ever see those two play together again because it's just sad how it ended. Didn't they go 3-6, 3-7, 3-6?
Yeah, so I guess you could add it to the card, but you know,
Yeah, I won't. No.
it's not really worth it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's sad, but sometimes it goes like that, you know.
Yeah. What's the
Anyway.
next topic, Brad?
Let's talk matches, baby. So, what we're going to do, we're going to talk about 5 teams that have particularly interesting storylines. Usually we talk about more, but that's fine because then we're going to do the entire bracket. We've got to start with LA Thieves, baby. Congratulations, 0-5. Did Paris go 0-5 last stage? Or, yeah, okay, they did. They joined Paris on the 05 club. Congratulations. They lost to LAG game 5. They lost game 4 to Seattle. I mean, it just got outplayed in that second series. The second series was pretty funny, really, because they basically just lost the plot live on air. Like, the comms were just absolutely disastrous. Kenny had lost full. You know, surely a change is needed. The question that, of course, look, we talked even last week about the fact that we feel like a change might be needed and what they should do. Kenny to main or Kenny to a sub, some people have said. Like, there's many ways to do it, but something's got to change. I don't know if something will change before the major. They're still like, looking at their team, they still kind of scary. They'll play the loser of FaZe or New York. So tough game because they have the 12th seeds. They get the theoretically hardest first round matchup in terms of the seeding. But you know, whatever they do with the roster, there's been a lot of talk about the coaching, right? And whether JCap needs some assistance over there. We look at a lot of the other top teams. We see a head coach, an assistant coach, an analyst. You know, Austin's in the call. And basically, Nadeshot said that he was defending Cap and Mudog and the guys. Because, look, the fact of the matter is, you look at the results that Cap and Mudog have got from the players that they've had. Like, even though Mudog's the GM, but, you know, you can raise questions there as well. But at some point, you've got to open up the question about the coaching situation, right? Because it's never really talked about because it's like, okay, the team sucks as the players, which I agree, probably 90% of. But at the same time, at some point, the coaching question arises. Nadeshot was like, look, if the players tell me that Cap's doing a bad job, we'll get rid of him. But it's like, you know, when are the players actually going to say that realistically? And Enable then went on to say that JCap is just not a good coach in terms of, like, not necessarily that, but he's not a good man management coach. He's not good at dealing with the players and the personalities. So he's they need like either an analyst, because Jacob probably has very little idea of like, oh, our break percentage on P4 on Berlin is this, and the league average is this, and your KD, like, you know, Envoy on this particular hill is lower than, you know, the average for your role, therefore we need to reconsider this. He probably doesn't have access to that because there's no one there anymore. There's no Brandon, who, you know, Novus, who's now GM for Seattle, to actually do that. And the other side of things, they might need like a Crowder-esque guy, because what I thought, Enable actually made a very interesting point that right at the start of the year when LA Thieves were good, they had this whole cocky thing about the Gavutu, like, don't shell us there, we don't lose it. Like, they got maybe a bit ahead of themselves on that front. And now that it's going badly, they seem to just be completely checked out. And like, you know, I think you can look at the coaching to some degree when you see a team that was pretty good, top 3, arguably some of the top favourites going into Major 1, and then to completely collapse as they have done mentally, the coach should be able to arrest that to some degree. I'm sure that if Crowder was the coach, he wouldn't let them get into the mental state they're in right now, where they don't trust each other, like they know something's got to give. I don't think a coach that's good at the man management stuff would have let the team descend into what effectively was an implosion in their game against Seattle. So that is the question that has been raised. JK might be very good at having a great idea and strategies around the game and even getting that point across, but is he good at managing the team? That's a question. So, you know, I'll throw it to you, Austin. Of course, you kind of know how things run internally at FaZe. You've got a lot of pieces there. LA Thieves have just the one guy in cap. So it's not necessarily like the blame to be piled on him. It's more of like the management needs a look, I think, just because there's been many teams with a lot of talent that have now basically all failed.
Yeah, I think we're in like a new age of Call of Duty where it's not so much just go in and get hot on any given day. It's more you have to be way more prepared than you've ever had to be in like the history of Call of Duty. Like you have to be way more knowledgeable what your opponents are doing, what your weaknesses are, where your strengths are on the map, and like how to get the most out of each map. So when you look around the league, obviously our team has 4 coaches. Boston has 2. Like they have Zed and Dens. London have 2 with Dom and Cam. LEG have 3. Minnesota have like 3. I think they have Looney, Saint, and Alex Zip.
It's at least 3, yeah.
Subliners have 3 still, I think. OpTic Texas have 2. Paris have 3. Seattle have 3. Toronto have at least 2. They might have 3. I'm not sure.
I think Toronto have 3 because don't they have? Isn't Joe doing stuff for them?
That's why I don't know if Joe's still there. That's the thing.
2 or 3.
And then you look at that, and then you look at LA Thieves with 1, and you look at Florida with 1. And the whole reason why I think at minimum teams should have 2 coaches is because every coach has a weakness, and you want an assistant coach that counterbalances that. And you want also, which I think is actually very important that a lot of people don't think about, you don't just want one person just constantly on your ass. Like this because like months and months and months, we're in a long season. We've been playing since October. So think now, you've had, what, 5 months of just one person on your ass about mistakes you're making? Like sometimes you want a different voice. There's a different person to bounce off of. Maybe you have one coach that's more harder, one coach that's more like you know, like the good cop, bad cop kind of situation. That's what I think is really important. Also, Cap has actually gone on stream and said, like, look, I'm a very good X's and O coach, which I agree he is. He's a very good X's and O's coach, but he's not a great motivator. Right, that's what his weakness is. He's literally said that, and you know, that's his weakness. So if 100 Thieves were to go about getting an assistant coach, you would want somebody that is better at the motivation side, which is better at the team morale side. You know, and they don't have that. And right now, I think what LA Thieves are going through is literally since they got reverse sweeped by us at the major, they have now lost 6 straight matches. And I think they got reverse sweep in the first match too of this qualifying stage.
Did.
So I think like their confidence is literally just in the bin. It's just horrible. And if your coach's weakness is getting people,
NSA, I think reverse swept them.
Yeah, if your coach's weakness is rebuilding that confidence, that's where you're just gonna get stuck in this pit until they win. Like if they win one series, they probably turn it around because you don't go from being one of the best hardpoint teams to absolute dog meat without It's. I really think it's just confidence. I really do. I think it's a confidence thing. At least for Hardpoint and Control. For S&D, I just don't think they're a good S&D team because a lot of the players do the same stuff. They don't have like an initiator. Like when you look at it from like CS and Valorant, they don't have that really big like fast-paced entry fragger. They have Envoy, who I think his strength is being smart in the mid rounds and being that route man. You have Draza, who's kind of playing that same role, like a little bit slower, but he's forced into a faster role, which I don't think that's where his key is. And then Kenny and Octane are kind of more reactionary ARs on the map where they like the chow, but they like to get the information first. So you're just like getting into this stagnant, slow-paced S&D game that just isn't effective right now. So I think like one, I would look into getting an assistant coach that counterbalances what their weaknesses are, which is right now you need someone like a Sam Phoenix who's really hypes you up, gets you going, gets your confidence up a little bit, and maybe look at an S&D analyst. That's what I would say. Like those three things. That's why when you look at Toronto, if they still have Joe, I'm not even sure if they have Joe, but like you look at Toronto, Marky, Joe, and Flux. That's a great trio. I love that. Those guys are amazing. You look at Seattle. You have Sam, really hype man. He gets you going. Like I talk to that guy, and every time I talk to him, man, I swear to God, I have the most productive days. And then you have Brandon, who's like their GM analyst. He's like a data wizard. And then you have Equip, who's their S&D coach. I feel like that's going to start being the coaching tree you're going to have these next couple of years. And, that's what's going to your coaching doesn't make you perform crazily better, but what it does is it makes your ceiling more consistent, and it raises your floor. So you're in a better zone and you're in a better place to find success, which is what I think teams are going to be building for. And like obviously there's some teams that are ahead of the ball than others, and right now it just seems like LA Thieves are kind of behind the ball because they don't see any coaches they want to hire right now, which is kind of tough when obviously you have 11 other teams with full coaching staffs. And then maybe that is an issue right now that they can't find anyone that can perform the weaknesses that they need to fix.
You guys at Atlanta were the first team to have like an S&D coach and an analyst and two coaches, eh?
No, Chicago actually had an S&D
Chicago
coach.
had Tupac, right, before they nicked him.
Teddy Rex was in Seattle and Tiny was in Minnesota. We were the first ones with two coaches and an analyst. Us and LAG. LAG had Ricky Bevels and Doug. So there was a high interest in coaches in season one, and I feel like the teams that got the staffs that they wanted to, I mean, pretty much all the coaches are in pretty much the same spots. So it's really hard to find a coach mid-season that has experience that also you're confident in like filling the roles that you need. So I feel like that's also what 100 Thieves are kind of going through right now.
Yeah. I was just looking at their stats as well for this stage, and I noticed that no one had above a 0.92 in hardpoint. I don't know if your stats are the same, Austin. And then Envoy was the only one above a 0.77 in control, which is, I don't know, I think that's just quite absurd.
Yeah.
But I wanted to touch on, I think, did you see Nadeshot tweeting about, we're the best team to win with, come win with?
Yeah.
Would
He
you
always
say
tweets that before he makes a change.
I know. Would you also say that playing for LA Thieves is the worst team to lose for?
Yes.
Yeah.
I feel like there's a high, and it's not a bad thing. I just think right now there's a high pressure with that org, and you see that actually across all their esports. I don't think it's just Call of Duty. You see it in Valorant. They lose and it's like instant. It's not just from the org. I'm not saying that. I'm saying like from everywhere. You get that pressure because it's kind of like the same thing with OpTic. You join OpTic, you're expected to be a good team. You are not expected to be in 10th. You're not expected to go 0-5 in a stage. And that's kind of where you get that whether or not that's fair or not, but like that's what comes with that territory. It's what comes with like a lot of the teams. Like if our team, for instance, like going into the Modern Warfare, we were expected to do good because FaZe is that prestigious org. OpTic's that's prestigious org. 100 Thieves has now developed into that prestigious org. You're not expected to go 0-5, which it does put a lot of external pressure on players, which is something that's kind of hard to cope with if you're like caught unprepared with it,
Yeah, that's the thing really is like the way I thought about it today was if you look at the orgs in the league, you've got OpTic FaZe. They're the number 1, number 2 teams in the game right now. Nadeshot must be looking at OpTic and FaZe thinking, that's where we should be. Like, we're 100 Thieves, LA Thieves, the biggest brand, I guess, outside of those two in cards. We should be the number 3 team. Like, it should be OpTic FaZe Thieves. The South of the power ranking should be, in theory, based on spend power and this type of stuff. The reality is very different at the moment. So that's the thing. Like, Nadeshot and 100 Thieves in general are pretty ruthless when they're not doing well, and they're not afraid to spend money. So, we'll see what happens after this major, but a losers bracket start is going to be far from easy for them. If they make a bit of a run, fine, but even if they come top 6, like, it's just not good enough, right? Back-to-back top 6s. I can't imagine, unless they make some crazy run, that they somehow survive this with this current team. We shall see.
Yeah.
A team that more than likely, go on.
I think they're in a tough spot just because, I mean, you have Draza with 0.74. You're getting first blooded 60% of rounds in S&D. No one's positive in any or in hardpoint, and you got Envoy, who's the only positive one in control, which arguably he should be the only one that's probably going negative because he's running a sub in the controls. So I don't know what you do, but I really do think one win will just get this team at least back to the midfield, because their confidence is just straight in the fucking bin, man. Like, that's literally what you can see on their faces every time they play, which sucks because when these guys are high in confidence, really good, but they just have to get that back. But we can move on.
Yeah, all good. Because, I mean, another team, well, a team on the opposite side of things that actually probably does make it through this major with the current team is the Subliners, baby. Would you believe it? I'm honestly impressed how quickly they turned it around with just a one-man change. They look so different. I mean, it's almost like a two-man change because Neptune is no longer a bot. So there's that. There's obviously multiple reasons that cause that, but he's been killing it. Paul X has been very solid. Crim looks more comfortable in the main. Makes sense, right? And of course, we've said that maybe Los Angeles Thieves could take a lesson from what New York have done here. Hydra's still Hydra. They clutch up the winners brackets. Of course, it was an impressive clutch. 1-2, winning 6 hard points in a row now. Like, think about that. They were 0-13 to start the season in hard points, at least excluding the kickoff. Now they're on a 6-win streak, or 6-0 since the change, which is, pretty impressive stuff. I wonder what happens right after this major. Like, with the middle of the pack teams, I think being rather inconsistent and tough to call, New York could even be like a top 5 team in the game after this major. It's not out of the realms of possibility. They might already be in, not far off that conversation with a few more victories. They play FaZe first round. It's tough. An upset there would be insane. They play OpTic after that if they win. They've got definitely the harder side of the bracket. If they lose, they play Thieves, which is like also not easy. But like, if they make a decent run here, they can really turn some heads. I think they already have, to be honest, Lion.
Yeah, for sure. They ended up ahead of FaZe in the standings, which is insane.
Unbelievable. FaZe are washed.
Yeah, I mean, wasn't it technically a 2-person change when Neptune came back because Royalty was there beforehand? So it was like he came back in. But
yeah, I'll give you that. I'll give you that.
Yeah, but I guess kind of not. And I think we always run with the narrative that a 2-person change is the only change that's going to make a difference. But I think this year and last year, it proved that
role
one-man
swap as
change,
well.
yeah, with role swaps and a new vibe entirely within the team can change the team entirely. And so I'm really excited to see how they do. And I think if they upset FaZe, I wouldn't be like super surprised right now with where they stand. But I guess we'll see. I'm just pulling up their stats. If you want to talk for a bit there, Easy Mac.
Yeah. So I actually think they're in a much better place because they found out how to win some hard points. I think that was like hugely important for them. That was something where they were just getting. You can't start every series down 1-0. You just can't, because then you're just I don't know. You're just pretty much chalked for the series. You're just always down on the negative. They were another team that I think we've pounded on. They just had zero confidence in doing good. You were just getting outslayed by a ton, and they had zero confidence they can actually do anything. Even though they started out, I think 0-3. I think they're now 6-0 in hardpoint. They have a 77% hold percentage, and they have a 31% break percentage. So those are both pretty good. They're not like outstanding anyway. The break percentage is actually pretty high. But they've kind of transformed how they've been able to do that. That's awesome to see. One thing I really like how Paul brought like a whole new energy to that team, and obviously Neptune's been outstanding. Now the thing for them is I feel like the top four right now are obviously Texas, us, London, and Boston. That this spot's actually it's pretty wide open. Your biggest competition I think would be LAG right now. I think LAG is kind of like an underdog and where they're ranked. I think outside of LAG you have Toronto, you have Florida, like those are your competition. So you come into this major, you actually do pretty well. Like you could easily find yourself in the top five spot going into major 3 in the pro am, which is it can really like propel you to start doing better in the later half of the season.
Yeah, and I wouldn't have expected that at all 2 weeks ago, which is crazy how quick that turnaround was. But I just wanted to highlight Neptune. Since they made the changes, he's had a 1.32 in hardpoint with 29.1 kills per 10 minutes, which is ridiculous because he was one of the slowest players on this team beforehand. And then Paul X with 100 seconds of hill time. Like they're looking really good in hardpoint now, really cohesive. I think the only area where they need to improve in the last 3 matches was somewhat their slaying and control, but everything else is looking extremely solid.
Yeah, if they
that's
can
the
just improve on that.
difficulty against FaZe, you know, because FaZe is so good at hardpoint that like that's kind of a bit of a counter blow. But then again, New York on a 6-win streak, right? And Mank says, did New York have the potential to go all the way? I mean, we're going to do the bracket, but I think I want to predict New York to make a run here because I think they have it in them. But what are we going to say, Austin?
Yeah, that's the thing. If they can just improve one other mode with their hardpoint, that's when you start being able to like knock off series. Right now, I think they're in a very good place hardpoint wise, but something we haven't seen is control success and being a steady like S&D team. So it's gonna be interesting to see if they can round out one of those 2 modes. It's kind of like what a lot of problems that other teams have had this year so far is they get really good at one mode, but they can't really round off the other 2. But if they can do that, they can definitely be a threat to any team.
Yeah, but that probably stems from the fact that they were the worst hardpoint team the league has ever seen, and now they're top 3 since the changes, and then they've forgotten about other modes as much.
Yeah,
There's
it's
a new
easy to
worst
get into
hardpoint
that.
team on the block.
It's easy to get into that mode though, where you're like, we got to hyper focus on this. We have to get good at this, and then you kind of drop off in other areas. It's impossible to stay at like such high levels for everywhere across the board. It's like a give and take, and so now if they can maintain at least some of this hardpoint form, and then get better at either S&D or control or both, then they'll be in a really good spot. Obviously, it'll be a tough matchup for us either way.
Quick little hot take discussion point before we go to Toronto. After this whole shenanigans with Clay and he goes and the team gets way better, is Clayster officially like an overrated leader in COD? Given his United thing and now Dallas and now this team, it's a question that's being raised. I'm not necessarily going to comment, but it definitely lowers maybe his stock to some degree, given this team's gone on to see great success. Not
I would
only
say
so
not
far.
not in previous years, but I think this year, every time we went into listenings or every time the team talked about him, it seemed to be quite negative. But years prior, I would say no. I just think that this year solely he's been in the mix and pretty, I don't know, temperamental. What do you reckon, Austin?
See, I always thought he was a great vocal leader. I've never obviously been on a team with him, so I don't know much about the X's and O's. But like like vocal lead or like X's and O's leaders, like I always thought, you know, Lamar accuracy, Alec on our team, Karma was a good guy for like the X's and O's. Crim has his like it has some good like playbook design. I thought really in Modern Warfare Rambo was like really important for them, and like Crim and Clay were more of the vocal leaders on the team. It's just different leadership styles. Like I think some people are more talented at the micromanaging and getting everyone in line, and some of them are more vocal leaders. And I did see leaders in COD are overrated. I don't think so personally anymore. I really don't. Not bashing anyone, but in Modern Warfare, we didn't have that one clear leader. Like we had a bunch of different voices, and at times when it was in tight moments, it got hard if not everyone's not on one same page. And at the time, I always thought leaders were kind of not necessary. Like as long as you have a good coaching staff, you can get everyone on the same play. But you get into a tense moment, you actually do need that leader to kind of like crack the whip and get everyone like on the same page. And like some teams have it differently. Some players they have four guys that all want to talk, and like that's just as bad as four guys that don't want to talk, because then you're talking over yourselves. You're not following a set plan. So, well, I'll be real. Like you guys don't see anything of what these guys do leadership wise. It's actually so hard to tell who's a good leader, who isn't, because you don't see it from the outside in. But on the internal sides of teams, like just being able to work with Alec, and like there's actually a lot of players like Chris on our team, Simp, he's like a big leadership role. But like seeing how a leader can transform a team, like I am a big believer that having like a Zero, a Lamar, like someone that can, get the troops in order and have that, where it's 240 in a map 4, we have to win, we're down 1-2. Like you don't want everyone running around like headless chickens. You got to get someone to snap in order, and that's something that is 100% needed.
Let's go on then, because a team has taken New York's crown of the worst hardpoint team in COD history, and that's Toronto Ultra, baby. Absolute shambles for this team the last few weeks, it must be said. It's strange that they won the kickoff. It's funny because they said their practice was awful going into the kickoff classic. They win it, and then it's like, wow, okay, Toronto are back. People doubted them. People should shut the naysayers up or whatever. And then they just keep getting worse and worse. They can't win a hardpoint. Their hardpoint stats are so atrocious, it doesn't even bear thinking about. They lost the final map they played. It was a hardpoint in their final series of the Major 1 qualifiers. They then lost 7 hardpoints at the Major 1. Every single hardpoint they lost. Still got top 4, but that's probably a bad sign, right? As we discussed a couple of weeks ago. So they lost 8 in a row there. They then come into stage 2. I believe they won their first 2 against Minnesota. That they played in that series, and then they've lost another 8 in a row. So they're currently 2-16 in their last 18 hardpoint maps, which is as atrocious as I really believe I've ever seen a stat. And as I say, a map 1 win against Minnesota doesn't even count, to be honest. So, I mean, yeah, there we go. The other thing is they can't even be relied on to win a game 5 anymore. That's what they used to do. They used to, okay, fine, if we're going to lose a couple of hard points or whatever, at least we're going to win a game 5. But even this stage, they've proved they can't even do that, right? I mean, they lost game 5 to Paris, right? Like, that is the series against Paris where the old Toronto, okay, maybe they struggle a bit. Sometimes they're a bit temperamental in the slaying, but they'd always clutch up the game 5, no doubt. But not the case this time. So 1-4, the loss to New York sent them down to losers in the 11th seed, which does not put them in a good spot actually for the major. Let me just have a look at the bracket real quick, because that puts them playing the loser of Boston or LAG, which LAG will talk about the substitution there in a second. But yeah, like what's going on here? Because all of a sudden the question is being there about, do they need to get involved in these post-major shuffles? Because from my perspective, whenever a team has had great success, as in winning majors last year, they never placed outside of the top 3 since they brought Insight in. They were always grand finals, top 3s, winning stage 2 major, there and thereabouts. 1 year on, stage 2 major coming just around the corner, they're in a terrible position. And I always think that when a team has had success and it's fallen off, they're even more likely to blow it up, because it's very tough to be at the top, go down to rock bottom, and climb back up. Probably something else is going on, i.e. the game doesn't particularly suit them. Clinics and Cami, they haven't done much lately, it must be said. All good teams coming to an end, but not everyone agrees. Austin, what do you think?
Yeah, I just don't think this game really suits them, as like cliche as that sounds. Last year, where they excelled, like they were a 50-50 hardpoint team, which is still like really good. That's what most teams aim for. But they were elite at control and S&D, and right now they're not finding anywhere near that kind of success in those 2 modes. And they're not even close to 50-50 in hardpoint, which is just killing them. Like some quick stats for their hardpoint, they have the 9th lowest hold percentage at 72.3. They have the 8th lowest break percentage at 24.1. And they have the 10th lowest rotation percentage at 44.8. So they're not rotating the hills, which is okay as long as you're a good breaking team, but they're not a good breaking team. And then when they have to hold hills, like money hills, they're not holding them. So like I don't know how you expect to win when you're not really succeeding on any game plan. They're struggling mightily, like really badly, in finding opening duels in S&D. Insight is 0-6 in opening duels. The rest of the gang aren't faring much better. You're at a 44 win percentage between the other three. You really aren't getting much out of Cammy, who was your star player last year, who lit it up. He has a 0.94 right now. You could argue that the trio of stars they had last year was Cammy, Kleenex, and Insight. And right now, Insight's struggling to be as efficient because I feel like this game doesn't really reward slower AR players as much as last year did. Like, he has the lowest engagements per 10 minutes in hardpoint. Insight does. He gets 50 engagements per 10 minutes. It's the lowest in the league. And he has a 0.96 KD. So he has low engagements, but he's also not high on having, positive engagements is what I like to call them. Like, kills plus deaths or kills plus assists, which is where he's kind of struggling. Kleenex hasn't been as like lights out the last 2 weeks. I feel like he's been struggling. I don't know. It just seems like they just don't have a mode to like build off of, and like no one player is really performing really well. Besides like Insight and S&D's had some crazy moments, but outside of that, it's just like pretty just midfield play. Just pretty like 8th through 5th like type of team, which I absolutely hate because I actually love the Toronto guys. I want them to do really good this year. I don't like seeing them be in such a rut.
Yeah. Well, my voice is gone.
You've done a rap.
Yeah. With the major, we talked about this last time. The fact that they got 4th without winning a hard point, which was, I thought, quite impressive. But you disagreed, and you ended up being right because I expected them to get better at hardpoint and maintain their efficiency in search and control. And the only thing that they seem somewhat competent in right now is control. Search and destroy for the qualifiers, they got first blooded 62% of the time, which is crazy because you can't be playing winning S&D if you're 3v4 2/3 of the time. And so, yeah, I feel that at this point, you kind of have to blow it up, hey?
I love the term blow it up.
I hate to think that way though, because the way I think about it is if you knock a player off this roster, right, there is probably pretty minimal chance that this roster would like come back together, And this roster found so much success in Cold War. Like, do you just ride it out this year, knowing that you're probably a midfield team where that might have some, spikes of great success and then like random like, free falls? Is that okay for a year, or do you react based off of, a rough first 2 stages?
I think go online. Then I'll give my perspective. You might change your mind.
We talked about the one person change being effective. I think that if they pulled one player from this team and brought in someone else, it's possible that they could find a new momentum. But I also agree with what you're saying. Their ceiling is still extremely high with this roster. But they might just have to wait till a new title to be that team that they were last year. I just don't see that being the case with Modern Warfare 2, which is going to be somewhat similar to what we had this year. I think the only way that isn't the case is if the maps are bigger and, more classical Call of Duty maps, but I don't know.
I just hate because like one clear weakness that you have here on this roster is probably like Cammy isn't performing to the level that he was last year. Insight isn't performing to the level he had last year. So if you were to change somebody, you would look at those guys. But those guys were top 6 players last year. Like I think Cammy was number 4, and I think Insight was number 5. Was he? I think like both of those guys were.
Yeah,
and
pretty much.
I don't think you get rid of those guys. I don't even think you think about it, knowing that that's what their ceiling is, and like right now is like where their weakness is. And then when you have Bance and you have Kleenex as your SMG duo, I think that Bance provides a ton of leadership for the team and like how they play the game. And I actually think he's doing a very good job of being that envoy role where he's taking a lot of routes. He's obviously their bomb planter in S&D. He's doing a lot of good things when I watch the minimap. And Kleenex is obviously Kleenex. I don't think you get rid of him. He like when entry fraggers are one of the hardest things to get right now. you don't get rid of a premier entry fragger, even though he's in a little bit of a rut right now. So it's like you're in such a lose-lose situation on that team. The only thing you have to do is I think you just grind it out. I think you grind it out and try to find some success. I think there's still, I think philosophy-wise, if they change some stuff, they're still really close to being a good team. It's just maybe we might not see them be consistent number 2 as we did last year, but it doesn't mean they can't consistently compete with the top teams to take them down. I think that's clear. It's still in the realm of possibility. You got to be like, they're 4-1 in control of this stage. You can't be on an 8 game losing streak in hardpoint. You got to give yourself a chance to get to game 5 and steal some series. Like, that's where they're struggling.
It's not been great, yeah. Okay, few things here. I agree with Lion that, like, look, next year's game is Modern Warfare 2. It's similar to this year. Yes, CleanX was pretty damn good at Modern Warfare, as were all of them to some degree. But they played so much better, I feel, in a kind of Cold War-esque game. And I almost kind of feel the same about FaZe, to be honest. We'll talk about them in a second. The other side of things is CleanX has been underperforming. And at the end of the day, money talks, right? And this is the month period after the major where I wonder if you do stick it out, you've got a lot of time to contemplate, right, what's going on. You've got a lot of time to practice and to kind of question. And let's say Los Angeles Thieves do come into the market. There were rumors that they wanted CleanX in the off-season, and they wanted him and Envoy as their SMG duo, which I think actually makes more sense than what they ended up doing. And with Toronto struggling, if I'm LA Thieves, I'm like, well, look, what if I phone up Ultra and I say, well, you know, this is the bag. How much to buy CleanX out the team? And they might think, well, you know, shit, with that money, we can maybe do this, or we can maybe get this guy of this team, or who knows what goes down as a result of that, right? But if I'm that team, that's what we suggested, right, for Los Angeles Thieves. It's like, well, look, they probably want to put Kenny to a main, Draza to the flex, and bring in a sub. If CleanX is there, and they maybe wanted him before, but he wanted to stay on Toronto while they were good, then who knows? I mean, LA Thieves have the money, and with Toronto underperforming, it's not inconceivable that they decide that, okay, maybe it is worth a go. That's just my kind of weird potential prediction. I think that they probably do want to try and stick it out, but it just does depend on the major, right? And the fact of the matter is, if you're 2 stages in with very limited, especially recent success, then now is kind of the time to, like, look, we've got to make sure this team is actually going to be competent so that we can make a good run for champs. Because, you know, I think the mindset of sticking it out and hoping it next year's better is just a recipe for disaster if they continue to underperform, and then probably things end up blowing up in the off-season anyway, and you've wasted your time. So, I don't know. I just think all good teams come to an end, to be perfectly honest. I don't think there's that many rosters that last the test of time. You know, how many rosters really last over a year? Like, it's not that common, to be honest. This team is getting to that point. The one team I did think of when I think maybe it was Lion you mentioned about going into next year was the Envy team in Infinite Warfare. They won Black Ops 3 champs. They go into IW terrible. They stick it out, and somehow at the end of the year, they get really good again and get second at back-to-back events and, you know, could have won champs. So that's an example of a team that stuck together and they made it work. I don't know how they made it work, to be honest, but somehow all the pieces finally came back together. So maybe this team's looking at that and thinking we could do something similar and become the number 2 team in the game again. But I don't know. I'm not sure what they'll do, to be perfectly honest. Let's talk FaZe. Number 1, number 2 team last year. Austin, you're here joining us. Interesting week for you guys. Weird stats, actually. Took down Folder, comfortable. Lost to OpTic, of course, 3-0, but with the substitutes. Your S&D is 2-5 this stage, but the hard point is 7-2 and 7-1 with Simp in the team. But very impressive. I still feel like, though, you guys are obviously incredibly dangerous. This team is never not going to be dangerous. But to me, you guys are much less ruthless than last year. This is my perspective. I mentioned this before we went live, but looking at that run, the 13 win streak, series win streak, that OpTic are 2 series away from breaking that record. Looking at that win streak is absurd. It literally was 3-0, 3-0, 3-0, 3-1, 3-0, 3-1, 3-0 or something. Though there was a 9 series stretch in there where you didn't lose more than a map in a series, and most of them were 3-0s. Like when FaZe went up 2-0 last year, I don't know what their conversion rate was from 2-0 to 3-0, but I'm sure it was higher than any other team in the league. Like it was outrageous how often when you lose game 1 to FaZe, it's just chalked. And it's almost like, I was thinking about this example earlier today, which isn't really valid anymore, but it was like back in the Sir Alex Ferguson days at United when they were champions of the league, any team turning up to Old Trafford was just shitting themselves. Like you come to Old Trafford, you know you're in for a hard afternoon. And when you go down 1-0 within 25 minutes, the game's over. Obviously not the case anymore. But that's the thing with FaZe. Like last year when you went down 1-0, you're like, Jesus, we're going to play FaZe in search and now control. Like it's just done. I don't feel like that's the case anymore. But look, unfortunate substitution. Pristini in for the OpTic series. He played well though. Of course, some concerns. Is Simp going to be okay? Is it going to hurt you guys prep? But yeah, that's kind of my spiel on FaZe. You can tell me why I'm wrong.
Well, no, I feel like from the outside looking in, I feel like we obviously aren't doing as well as we did last year. Anyone can see that, you know. I did feel like we had a hard stage, like matchup wise. Like obviously, I don't think we should have lost to Seattle, whether or not. Like obviously, it is what it is. I actually felt really confident going into that OpTic series, and like weirdly enough, I actually feel kind of even more confident after that series. I do feel like our S&D, it's such a weird spot right now. For, like opening duels wise, we're actually 37-25 in opening duels. We win 60% of our opening duels. So it's like we're doing the hard part, but not finishing off the easy part. And it's like as soon as we start like capping off some of those rounds, like a lot of those games switch. I did see on the broadcast like we have one of the worst like 4v3 win percentages, which obviously isn't a laughing matter, but it's something that I do feel like is very fixable. Not just repetitions, because obviously our practice goes a lot better than the matches are. I know it's there. It's just capping that off. Like Tyler right now he's back to he's a menace again. He's 18-9 in opening duels. Just amazing, but we're still not winning the maps. So we have to find ways to actually cap those off. So yeah, I really do feel like we're doing the harder part, and then we just need to do the easy part, which is get bombed down and play safe and win the rounds. Or play your numbers, retake bomb sites. That's the easy part. We just have to get there and get better at that. Hardpoint, statistically, we were the #1 team. We still are on that. Like obviously, us and Texas are really close. Right now, we're holding 81.6% of hills. We're breaking a league high 35.3. So we're doing really, really well on that front. I'm really happy with how we're playing those. Control, we played Florida on the new ticks. I think we played phenomenal on the tick side of it, which is something I was just so excited for. I really do think that like probably us, Boston, I think us like our two teams are the biggest benefactor of the tick change, and something that I like is our matchup with OpTic now on those. I really want to see how we do, because OpTic is just as lethal on the attacking side, but on the defensive side, what made them so elite is that they played so tight in some of their setups and would just trade out anything. It would be so hard to break. They were the hardest team to break when you have that 1 point left. I do want to see like how we stack up now that you really can't give away any ticks for free. You can't do anything. It'll be really cool because now obviously ticks decide who gets round 5. So yeah, I know we're not in the super strong like winning everything 3-0 phase, but I do feel like the last 2 weeks has been a really big confidence booster in like how we're playing hardpoint, and like now we're doing the hard part of S&D right, not the easy part. And then in control with the ticks, we did play Florida really hard. I loved how that looked. Even against OpTic, we lost 3-1, but that last offensive round, even with Pristini, we still had a pretty decent chance to at least bring it to round 5. I don't think we would have won it, obviously, but we brought the S&D to around 11 and could have brought that that Kavutu to around 5, which honestly with a sub, I'll take that any day of the week. Obviously, it was a shitty situation, but for those who don't know, like Chris was he had one of those like 24-hour stomach bugs. He tried his best. We were in the middle of a warm up, and that dude's uking. he tried his best, but he was fine on Monday. We practiced on Monday. We're good to go. We're going to be full power. We
Full
actually had
power.
we had like a terrific week of practice going into that. We had a really good match against Florida. That happens. I was so like pissed, and then like obviously we're right back on the ball on Monday. We're right, we were going to be on land scrims tomorrow. Like I'm not worried about that, but who knows? Like, what do you think, Lion?
I feel like you guys are the best team at coming back from adversity, and you've proved it in the past. So I can imagine you guys are going to be coming guns blazing into this major. But I was just looking at the stats, and in Hardpoint, I really like how everyone's contributing pretty much exactly the same. Like it's 23, 24 kills per 10 minutes for everyone. And everyone's got like 60 seconds plus hill time as well. It's like no one's that one player that's doing it all. It's all spread across evenly. And it proves kind of in your results as well. You're 7-2 in maps in Hardpoint.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just want to know, what have you guys been doing, if you can talk about it, to fix the issues you have in the other game, or Search and Destroy mainly, but Control, I guess you guys are great still as well.
It's just in this game, like the way I like to explain this to people is in this game the individual skill gap isn't as high because obviously we have lower health. But the team skill gap I think is really high. Doing stuff as a team, doing stuff make the game easier for yourself instead of harder, is really important. And like that's something we've been really like hammering on. Like obviously right now I think like OpTic has a huge advantage because they're playing as such a good team on Control and Hardpoint. They're making the game easier for themselves. They're making it so the other teams are the ones making the mistakes, not themselves. And that was something where instead of playing as four individuals that have insane talent, like let's play as one team that has insane talent and play as a team. And that's something you just have to lock in. It's just about keep locking in practice. I think losing that major, obviously, these guys hate losing. That's what I love about them though too. Is like they've already obviously done so much already in their young careers, but they're still hungry to keep it going. So like one loss, like just pisses them off so much that we were like literally back on the grind the next day, and addressing like key issues that we can improve upon. So like we're working on just being a better team oriented game. Everyone has a role. Everyone has to do the role. And if we do that, then we're gonna beat anybody because we have just as much talent as any team out there. And if we're playing as a unit, no team's gonna be able to stop us. It's just getting back to that. And I think we found that in Hardpoint. We're 7-1 when we have our full team. I think that shows that we have it there. We in Control. I like obviously it hasn't been seen yet a lot because the tick change is we've only had one match really, where we've been able to show that, but it's been looking a lot better. So yeah, I just hope we can show that this method works at the major, and we can kind of keep climbing off that because we're halfway through the season. It's about time where after this break is when you want to start finding your killer instinct before the God champs. So I'm hoping we keep building off of this.
One thing to address, I saw it in the chat and I mentioned it in the second video today. Shotzi was saying recently how you guys haven't been scrimming much as of late due to issues with like ping or something. Like the servers ping differential's weird. That's what Shotzi said. They haven't been scrimming you guys late because of ping. And I was like, is that the case, or do they just want to hide strats? What's the situation from your perspective? When's the last time you scrimmed him?
A bit. It's been a minute. I don't know if it's really ping. I know like last time we scrimmed we had some pings, but I don't think it's not one thing or the other. It's just right now, obviously we played them last week, so most teams when you're playing them, you don't scrim them beforehand. Before the major, we were obviously prepping as a coach, you have to look long term. The players, you want them to look literally day to day, but as a coach, you want to look long term. Obviously, we're going to be playing obviously I thought my gut we're going to be playing OpTic in the finals, so we got to have advantage as many of the maps. I think eventually it's not that you don't scrim a team for any reason. It's just like right now we're scrimming a lot of teams that have different looks because we want to be able to test our methods against every different team. And quite honestly, it's pretty much just the scheduling. Like obviously we just played OpTic last week, so we're not going to scrim them the week before that. I don't know if we scrim them before the major, but because we just have land scrims Wednesday and Thursday, or Thursday we play. So, but I don't think it's any one thing. I think it's just the scheduling. Like obviously we just played OpTic last week, so we're not going to scrim them the week before that. I don't know if we scrim them before the major, but because we have land scrims Wednesday and Thursday, or Thursday we play. So, but I don't think it's any one thing. pretty much with the online servers now, the way we practice on the league servers, so you can like literally pick whatever server you want, which is amazing. I'm so glad we have that change, but yeah, it's not like any one real reason. It's just pretty much just how scheduling is. Like, there's a lot of teams that don't end up playing, and the other teams do too much. So it is what it is. Nothing like major or anything.
That is fair enough. Okay, well, speaking of OpTic, let's talk about them. Incredible stage from them. Yes, they played 2 teams with subs, but the stats right now, they're on a pretty absurd, actually. They're currently on a 12 map win streak. The record, I think, is 13. So they're close to eclipsing the map win streak in a row because they won the last 3 series 3-0. And against Seattle, they went down 1-0 and won the next 3. They're on a 14 control win streak. They're on a 12 series win streak full stop. 2 more series will take them over the line of, the 13 streak record from FaZe last year. Yes, 2 wins against teams with subs, but impressive nonetheless. I mean, when Los Angeles Thieves played London with Paul X, they still got 3-0'd. So, still the composure, closing that series impressive. I think that, okay, will they get complacent before the major? Honestly, I think with this new team dynamic, their mindset is different to how it has been. And I also think that they're kind of coming for, they want those records, like there's part of them that Scump knows full well what win streak they're on and what the record is, and that they want to eclipse it. So, everything's still there. I also wanted to just give a shout out to Scump for being oldest SMG player in the league, but I think he was a top 3 player this stage. He's absolute monster. Auto on Gavutu, he's unkillable. With the SMG on most maps, he was better than Shotzi this stage so far. Dashy, Scump, Cell, man, incredible to see how he's still performing. And I've said a lot that in terms of greatest of all time debate, longevity is something that is incredibly valued and I think at times underrated. The fact that he's been at some point a top 3 player in pretty much every game he's played for 11, 12 years. It's just absolutely absurd. So yeah, Lion, what do you think? They're going 15-3 map count here, number 1 seed. Doesn't mean they get the easiest side of the bracket though, because if they win, they play FaZe or New York, but potentially an OpTic FaZe rematch round 2. Very similar bracket actually to what we had Major 1.
Yeah. I don't think they had the hardest qualifiers. I mean, they started off against LA Thieves when they were still hot and just won that series when they should have lost. And I actually think that was what destroyed LA Thieves.
It might have been, yeah.
They got smoked in the hardpoint and the control, and then they still almost won. But through the SND, they should have won it 6-2. But then they played Seattle, pretty comfortable 3-1, Florida 3-0, LAG 3-0, and then weak Atlanta FaZe 3-0. But yeah, you pointed out Scump. He's definitely the most consistent across all modes right now, maybe apart from Dashy. He's got a 1.1 in hardpoint, a 1.08 in search and destroy, and a 1.13 in control for these qualifying matches. And that's prime AW Scump numbers. And I'm really happy to see that right now. He's also the highest in hill time for OpTic. His SND is 18.5% of the time he's getting first blood. This guy's cracked. What do you reckon, Austin?
Yeah, I hate that some people are taking the last 2 wins against them. Honestly, you got to beat who's in front of you. Their streak right now that they're on is amazing. The level of Call of Duty that's being played in the league is obviously extremely high. They're beating everyone. Hats off to them for even having this win streak. Not many teams will ever have this win streak. Honestly, I love the Call of Duty that they're playing. They're very fundamental. In hardpoint, they're very rotational heavy. They're very hold heavy. They get all their holds and control. They're just absolutely lights out on offense and defense. S&D, they've low-key become one of the better S&D teams. I think they might be the best S&D team right now. And that's what hard work comes in. They've just been grinding relentlessly, and all 4 players are performing amazingly. This game really suits Scump. He's more of a pre-aim heavier type of player. He's not one of those guys that's just gonna be cracked out sliding everywhere. He's more of those guys whose patience is key to him. He's been playing phenomenal. Shotzi, Dashy, Illy, they're continuing what they did in stage 1. In their current form, it's going to take one hell of a performance to beat them. And I just don't know. It's so hard to even target one mode that you can like quote unquote steal maps against them. Like you have Dashy with a 1.27 in hardpoint, Shotzi with a 1.54 in S&D, and then every single player is above a 1.12 in control. Like that is absolutely absurd. So yeah, hats off to them. I'm actually really excited because last year, obviously, we repeated back to back in stage 3 and 4. I know for a fact it is very hard because everyone's watching you now, and all of your practice gets like dissected. All of your league matches get dissected. So if they actually come out in this major and win it again, like it's it's an immense achievement. It's very very hard thing to do. So hats off for them for I think are they tied with our series record or one behind?
Not yet. They're one behind. Yeah, they need to beat
And then
Seattle to tie.
are they get so they would either have to
They
play
might play
us or
you
New
to
York
beat you.
to break the record. That's actually like you can't write that up, man.
That's cool.
Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, I obviously I love Coach Ray and Troy. I love that. Like I was a big OpTic fan when I was coming up in the scene. So honestly, having them be one of the best teams is amazing for the scene. It like reinvigorates a lot of the fan base. So I'm all for them being like the really like one of the big favorites going into every tournament because it's really good for the scene and overall I don't know, it's just amazing for the CDL and Call of Duty.
Well. The major bracket has been confirmed. Before we talk about the bracket and do like our predictions for it, what we'll do is we'll do our fantasy teams because fantasy is out on Breaking Point. GG or breakingpoint.gg/fantasy will take you there. You can make your team. You got $25 to spend, and Omar, let me know which one's up on the screen because I can either talk over mine or we can give it to the rest of the guys. It's actually really difficult this stage to think about what to do. My philosophy for fantasy, I was like top 5% on. I've been top 25%, top 10%, top 5%. So by that metric, I'm going to win this time. But I don't think this team is going to be. It's tough. It's really tough because there's additional multipliers this time where the better you place, if you place top 6, your raw number stays as is. But if you place worse than top 6 or better than, you get a multiplier based on your placing. So picking players in teams that place well should be good. My philosophy generally is you've got to try and pick the players that you think are good. The winning team, if you want to go all out for number 1, the winning team is going to be the team that like pretty much has 4 of the top 5 or 6 performers. And often there'll be at least 1 or 2 up there that are unexpected. They're kind of like low, like Method's last stage I picked, and he obviously was like the best pick and he was only like $4 or something. There might be someone like that, especially if a team makes a big run unexpectedly. So for me, I've gone in with Dashy. Yes, he's $10, but OpTic to me should make the finals. That's good points at the very least. Get a good multiplier. Dashy's always a good lock for some fantastic points generally. So I don't think you can really go wrong with him. Then I wanted to pick a New York player because yes, they play FaZe round 1, but I thought that I actually think they have a really good chance here in making some sort of run. I actually want to predict them to get top 4, but the more I think about it, the fact that they're probably going to lose to FaZe because I can't really see how they beat FaZe in that FaZe is so strong in all the modes and their hard point, they get countered so well. That's going to be a tough one. So maybe the New York pick was maybe a little bit suspect, but still, I went for Neptune in the end, $6. I think he's been playing better than that lately. And then I needed the final 2. So I had I'd spent $16 at this point. So I had to spend $9 to finish out the rest of it. So I needed like a 3 and a 6 or a 4 and a 5. And I think that Toronto actually have an acceptable bracket. So Toronto play the loser of Boston and LAG. So they should be playing LAG with a sub because they're playing with Spartan instead of Gunners. We'll talk about that when we do the bracket here in a second. So if that's the case, I feel like Ultra should win that. If they win that, they play either Legion, London or Florida. More likely to be either Paris or Florida. So again, another series that Ultra should win. So I think that Cammy can put some decent numbers up here. Decent pick for $4. And then I had $5 to spend, and I think I went back and forth on either Hydra instead of Neptune and a $4 player like Maniac, Major Maniac. But in the end, I went for Temp because I think that Temp has been very good this year. For $5 on Paris, he's okay. The risk, of course, here is that, in fairness, what I've actually done here, I've realized, is that either Cami or Temp is going to get top 8 at best, which does give them a lower multiplier. But I'm still hoping that it works out okay. I don't know. There's a lot of complexities to how you can do this if you put a lot of time in. But Temp I think is a decent player to fry even if they lose. If they make it to round 2, which I think they might do, he gets maybe a 0.8 multiplier, which isn't great, but if he drops decent numbers, it should be okay. So it's a tough one, to be honest, to pick good players here. Those are my 4. I think it's decent. But it might not be the best. I'm sure you guys can do a better job. But I've seen so many different teams already, to be honest. Lion, far away.
Yeah, the multipliers really change who I wanted to pick because that also manipulates the cost for each player. So it's like where they're expected to finish also because all their OpTic guys are at the top because everyone expects him to win.
You can't pick like 2 OpTic players because, or like an OpTic out of FaZe because there's too much cash.
Yeah. So I went with people who I think will finish somewhat in the midfield, maybe top 6-ish. My first player I picked was Afro because he's frying, and I expect them to finish top 4. London looking good as always, so they probably will get a nice multiplier with that one. I believe he was $9. And then I got Methods because the guy he's going crazy right now. I'm kind of done talking about the Zenny Cat buff bullshit. I mean, like, it's funny, but now it's starting to get a little bit boring, and I bet that they don't really like it very much anymore. But I expect him to play well, and I expect them to be top 6 at least. My next player was CleanX because regardless, I think he's going to drop good numbers as he usually does. But I don't expect them to place very well, so might get a bit of a nudge on multipliers. And then Major Maniac, I think he's one of the most underrated ARs in the league. So I'm hoping that they can have a decent run as well. And if they get a decent placement as well, I'll be pretty happy. But yeah, my team is Afro, Methods, CleanX, and Major Maniac. I don't think they're going to do great against other people's teams, but I'm pretty hopeful because they could be a surprise team in fantasy for sure.
I wanted to pick Major Maniac, but I'm just, I don't know. I'm not sold on ROKKR. It is their major, though.
Yeah.
Austin.
Yeah. So I went a little bit different route with mine. I went a little bit rogue. So the way I tried to look at it is I tried to look at the bracket in front of them and like how hard it would be to, progress. And obviously that kind of looks a little bit askew because I have, Mac and Alec, and we have the toughest side of the bracket. But I ended up trying to balance that out with Capsule, who I think has quote unquote the easier side of the bracket. There is really no super easy side of the bracket, but I feel like they have a good route to a possible top 3 right away if they win their opening match and then their match in the second round. He could get really good points. He's been amazing for them on the SMG. I went with my man Alec because he's been actually kind of low-key frying. Ever since we lost that first matchup to Texas at the Major 1, he's just been lights out. So had to get him at $8. I thought that was kind of a steal. Toronto, I do think actually have a pretty good bracket run to where they could finish top 6 or higher. I feel like if they can get that first win under the belt, they can get some confidence, build it up from there. So I'm not too worried about having him as a losers bracket player. And then Mac, as I said last week on the podcast, I think he might be Seattle's best player. Fundamentally, he's just been playing lights out. If Seattle does fall against OpTic, I have faith that they're actually going to have a little bit of a rebound in the lower bracket, and he can kind of continue chugging along like he's been doing this whole year pretty much. So yeah, it's tough. It's really tough coming up with a team.
Pricey, man.
Yeah,
I was surprised at how difficult it
risks.
is. Usually you can pick players that you're pretty confident are going to be like, okay, he's not going to shit the bed. But now you've got to you can't pick everyone from winners. And you got to think about. I always think in terms of like, oh, if this player is going to play this player, then they're going to take away each other's points. So I never really like doing that. So I try and avoid that if I can. But it's impossible to avoid at some points. But yes, there we go, ladies and gentlemen. Those are our picks. Obviously, get involved. It's about time we talk about the brackets, because if you can bring this up on the full screen, oh my god, it's absolutely fantastic. Here it is, the bracket in full. So these are the first round games. We've already kind of hinted at some of these. Before we go, I'll just touch briefly on LAG, because of course Gunless is not going to be there. Unfortunately, he talked about his illness a bit on stream yesterday, or not on stream, but it was on his Twitter. That's like what he's been going through, the medication and stuff. So he reckons he's kind of near the end of it, like over maybe the hardest part. But yeah, that's tough to see. They kind of left it last minute to give him, I guess, the best chance of going. But Spart's going to be there instead. They obviously didn't have the greatest time with him up against OpTic a few days ago, but who has the best time against OpTic right now? There's not many teams that do. But yeah, it's still tough to see, because to me, I think this puts LAG in a really awkward position where, let's say they get bodied here, double rounded. Like, what do you do with this roster? Because you don't know where you are going into a period where there could be some teams making shuffles. So hopefully Gunless gets better, but it's tough to have too much faith in this roster given the sub change, to be honest. Gunless was probably their most consistent slaying force this whole season. Lion, thoughts?
Yeah. I mean, they got bodied by OpTic with a Spark. I think now they've got a few days and some land practice to work on things with Spark. I just think they're never gonna get back to the level without their full roster. So, and they got Boston Breach first round. So, I mean, are we just gonna go straight into predictions right now and just say they're gonna go down to losers?
I think we might as well just do it. I reckon we just crack on.
Well,
So I think we can all agree on that. But go on, Austin.
I do hope that Big P is doing okay. Obviously, he said he has to have surgery. So rest up, bro. I hope you come back in stage 3 or the Pro-Am feeling healthy and a lot better than how you're feeling now. Obviously, he got caught with the bug, and then everything else has been compounding. I just hope he's doing okay, and he's feeling better, and I hope the surgery goes well and he's able to come back at 100%.
Agreed.
Yeah, we can chug along.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, they're dropping down
Great word,
to play
Dustin.
Toronto round 1. Losers.
Yes, that'll be brutal. But yeah, I agree. Omar, lock it in. Boston have beaten LAG. So, Boston beat LAG. We're not really going to do map count predictions. We might talk a little bit about like which modes, right? Which teams match up well in which modes. Okay, so they will play the winner of London and Florida. To me, Florida, always a weird banana skin type team. But to me, London have been looking very solid. The win against Boston, to me, kind of just says, look, we're here to play. We're the number 3 team. We're not messing around. I think they'll take down Florida. I think Aches actually brought up an interesting stat where any series where they don't play Bacage hardpoint, they haven't won yet. They haven't won a single series where there's been no Bacage, which is quite interesting. So to me, London, you just veto that, and then London will win at least one hardpoint. And I think they're just better in every mode, to be perfectly honest, London. So to me, I would vote London unless you guys disagree.
Nah,
that's my perspective.
And then we get a Boston versus London rematch in round 2. I like that.
We do. Let's do the other side of the winners. OpTic Surge, New York FaZe. Exactly the same for OpTic as it was last time. Playing Seattle again. Look, from my perspective, OpTic is super hungry to break this record. I don't see Surge putting up that much of a problem for them, but of course they did for FaZe. If these was the other way around, it gets more interesting, right? Like if Surge are playing FaZe, then it's like, can Surge go on the 4-win streak against FaZe as an organization? Yeah, only spending £50 on Surge, interesting. But thoughts on this series, guys?
I don't see OpTic losing this, but I do think Seattle have been looking a lot better as of late. Just more consistent across the board than they were, especially in stage 1, at the end of stage 1. So I think they're coming in pretty all right, but I don't see them beating this current OpTic. And I think, just to skip ahead, I think FaZe are going to run through New York, and it's going to be another OpTic versus FaZe round 2. And that's exciting. as always.
Yeah, as much as I like Seattle, I think this would probably be a 3-0 for OpTic. Um, I think Seattle is getting a lot of unnecessary flack. People have to remember that they're a very young team. The whole purpose of this team is not to be the #1 team right now. It's to be very good at the end of the year. It's to be growing as you go. So my thing is, as long as they finish, like their goal should be obviously finish as high as possible. But I think as long as they're in the top 6 conversation, that is good for them, and because they're just going to continue to get better and better as the season goes along. So even though I have them losing 3-0, I still feel like they're going to bounce back in the lower bracket. But we can definitely move OpTic into the next round.
I agree. Okay, so then we've got FaZe New York, and this is like, I really want to pick New York here. And like, I think if I had to give a hot take of round one, this is it. But looking at this series in more detail and actually thinking about it, it's just so tough for me to actually take New York because they're, as we've talked about earlier, their search and their control has been very suspect. They've been winning the series they've won by winning every hard point. I don't trust them in a game 5 yet, and I don't think FaZe lose 2 hard points in this series. Like they maybe will win 1 New York, but I can't see them continuing that undefeated hardpoint streak with this roster against New York. So if there was a series I had to predict an upset, it would be this one. But actually thinking about it with kind of using the head, it's probably a FaZe win. But I'm going to pick New York, and then you guys can decide.
It's
I mean, yeah, we're running with FaZe for sure. I don't think Austin's picking New York.
I don't know about that.
It's tough because like I feel like right now the top 4 teams are like the top 4 teams. Like I am obviously pretty sold on us and OpTic. I think London is like clear cut, like can beat everyone underneath them, and then gives like us and OpTic a hard time, #3, and then Boston has been clear cut #4 for a minute now. So it's really tough to pick upsets right now because it's almost just like us 4 teams are like clicking, and then like everyone else is trying to play catch up, and it's one of the hardest things to do. Even though I do feel like New York's probably one of the hottest teams coming into this major. It's I don't want to really like say like it's gonna be a tough series. It's gonna be a tough series because until proven otherwise, our control and SD will be weaknesses. Weaknesses on the map pool until we prove it otherwise. That's my thing. Until we prove it in matches. So like this will be a good matchup for us to actually go out there and prove that what I've been saying. Like teamwork makes the team. Teamwork makes the dream work. We gotta show that this series before we actually move on to a very tough opponent.
Yeah, it would be shocking if you guys got dropped to losers. Because who would you face? You would face LA Thieves,
Thieves, yeah.
which would be, I think, a pretty.
A 3-0. Well, the hydration.
Come on, they were just up 2-0 on us like 3 weeks ago.
Sorry, it's too easy, man. It's too easy to roast these teams. They make it too easy to roast them. That's their issue.
If you say that, where was New York 3 weeks ago?
Flip the switch, baby. They need to clone Paul X and bring him in. Yeah. Apparently, he just doesn't lose. I think Paul X is the only player that's undefeated this season. Like he won the 2 season he got subbed into with London, and then he's undefeated on New York. So Paul X is going to go the whole season without losing a series. Hot take: New York win the whole thing.
Oh god.
Let's do losers. I guess we'll just go from the top. LAG versus Toronto. To me, Toronto get through this. LAG with a sub. I can't see them winning this series. Toronto, but then again, I mean, the hard points are so suspect. I think Toronto have a tough time here, though, still. I think it's like Toronto 3-2 or something. They might get some momentum going this tourney. I have them making top 6, but I definitely don't trust their hard points still. I think they might need a bit of getting going.
I'm going to do a hot take. I actually do think LAG has a chance in this series.
Wow, I like this.
I do think like Toronto's hard point is so absolutely suspect right now that LAG, they could steal 1 or 2 of those, and then like S&D, you still have who can ace them, who can just if they get going in S&D, they're just gonna plow through. So just to counter like we just
I like it.
Everything. I do think LEG is not as much as like a look past as as it was Boston versus LEG. I actually think they have a chance because of the map pools that actually match up in this. Because we can see even a bow cage hard point, and I feel like that could be an LEG map right there.
Yeah, it could. I want to agree, but I can't because of my fantasy. I need Kleenex to get some wins.
Oh no.
So I'm picking Toronto egotistically and for myself.
Unlucky
But-
Austin, it's 2-1.
Yeah, in reality, I think that's a 50-50 series because I can see LAG beating them in 3 respawns.
Yeah, I just don't like Spart is really good at S&D. Like Hook Asom really good at S&D. I just have a feeling like for some reason Toronto always plays bow cage and it's always like 191 to like 188. It probably unlikely, but that could be like the upset of Friday. It could easily be like the upset of Friday night.
I like that actually. But for now, we've got Toronto going onwards. I think the hot takes will definitely continue as we go on with the brackets. Florida versus Paris. I have Paris winning this one. The mutinies just piss me off. The team annoys me. They don't make any sense. I'm fed up of talking about them. I'm fully on the Donny Temp hype train. Jimbo, I think he has some things to prove on LAN here. He needs to not go rogue too much. But yeah, I actually think Paris are a more well-rounded team than Florida right now, which is something strange to say. But yeah, I've got Paris beating Florida. Let's go, baby. It's going to be a 3-2 though.
Do you want to go this time? You go first.
No, you're good.
No, go.
Oh, come on, because I'm gonna ruin it now. I actually have
good.
Paris too. I think what their weakness was in the first one was that Jimbo was moving way too fast. He was just like literally you could see on the minimap that he was just light years above his teammates. You can't trade that out if he dies. It's just impossible. But what I saw in those matches is John played amazing, Tem played amazing, and then Tom is like he's not killing it, but he's like doing enough. Obviously they still make some like bone-headed mistakes on S&D. Like you can't be getting 1v4'd. Like come on, guys. I've seen way too many 2v4s, 2v3s versus them. Like it's kind of like you can't let that happen. But I actually do think like this Paris team, they got a lot of support last major. I was actually super hyped because
people were hyped for them. Yeah, it was close.
Bro, those guys were cheesing, man. They were loving it. Like that's like the confidence they needed. So I have a feeling, Florida. I actually like Florida, but I don't love some of the things they do, and I definitely think Paris can take advantage of that.
Fair enough. I'm going Florida, but it doesn't matter because Paris is through to losers round 2.
Yeah,
Amazing.
we're bullish on Paris.
That's why I wanted you to go first. I didn't want to ruin it for you.
It's fine. We'll go again. Okay, Subliners versus Thieves. I've got New York making a losers run. I mean, I had New York beating FaZe, so that's a no-brainer for me. I actually think this series will be a bit interesting though, but I don't know. I really have faith in New York's hardpoint right now, and that's where Thieves have very much fallen off a cliff, to be perfectly honest. I can see as soon as Thieves lose the map, they're going to lose full. So I'm going to say New York 3-1.
I got New York 3-0.
Oh,
I really think it.
You were roasting me for roasting Thieves, and now you're giving them a 3-0.
Because I just think like right now, like they need this break more than any other team. Because I still think they're extremely talented. I think they're just struggling with confidence up the wazoo, and I don't think I think New York's actually on a really hot streak right now. Even if they do lose to us, they're gonna still want to do amazing at this major because they need the CDL points. So
Why not you?
Yeah, I gotta take Crim and the gang.
I do too. They're through.
Yeah, baby, Crim and the gang. Okay. Surge versus Minnesota. This to me is quite interesting. I've actually gone back and forth in my head a lot on this series because I don't want ROKKR to get first rounded at their own major. But I must say, and I speak on behalf of all European fans, ROKKR are the most hated team in Europe because they're always, the last game of the day, making a series 3-2, playing... I don't want to go too hard on them, but like, it's so boring watching ROKKR play. Do you know what I mean, guys? Like, do you agree in the chat that ROKKR are just the most boring team to watch? So purely on that basis, I'm taking Surge to win 3-1. But like, honestly, if you're from Europe, you don't like, especially me, when I'm thinking I've got to make a video and there's just been a big series that's gone down, and like let's say OpTic have just 3-0'd someone, and it's Minnesota last game of the day, and it's already like midnight, and I'm like, bloody hell, I'm going to be here until 2:30 watching Minnesota go game 5 round 11 with the reverse sweep. They always go down 2-0, and then they start bringing it back, and I'm like, here we go again. So yeah, purely on that basis, Surge 3-1.
Bro, Rav is not getting any Minnesota merch in the future.
I think they already sent it. I think it's already on the way.
That's why he said it, man. He's good.
I don't care about merch though, so.
I think this is going to go game 5, and Seattle will take it with a Lamar Ice clutch somewhere in there that kind of flips the switch for them. So I see, Seattle going up to a ROKKR, classically bringing it back to game 5 and then choking it away.
I actually have Minnesota. I know it doesn't matter because we already 2-0, but I just think there's no way in hell a team has their own major and loses the first round. Like, I refuse to believe they don't come out with a fire. So I don't know how deep they would have made it, but I would have had them go into the next round.
Hmm.
At least make it to a Friday.
I kind of want to see them go on. I love the
Saturday.
watch parties they do. I think as an org, they're actually doing some great stuff. Just the team annoys me. You can't blame me for that.
Some of their graphics annoy me as well.
Oh man, they don't speak about the graphics. They don't speak about the graphics.
I love their little like intros they
Bring
do
it up.
before the series. Like they're kind of good, but bro, their graphics, like I don't know what you're supposed to see on there. It's just like a bunch of teal and bright
If you guys haven't seen
purple.
their graphics, just have a look at the ROKKR Twitter and just look through some of their match graphics. Like I don't even know what I'm looking at half the time. It's it cracks me up, to be honest. Okay, we've got 8 teams left. Should we continue the losers run and then we can talk winners and see who drops down?
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
'cause those would go before actually on the schedule.
yeah, true. Cool. Toronto, Paris. Ooh, it's actually tough for me. I said I was having Toronto top 6, but now I think about it, maybe I'm bullish on the Paris run. I actually think I might be, to be honest. I think Toronto is so suspect right now. Actually, I want Toronto to lose because I want them to make a change. I think if they stick out, they're not going to be... I don't think if they stick out, I think they won't have the success they had before at any point ever again. So therefore, I think that Paris should win and that it's actually better for European COD if Toronto make a change. Paris
go through the
3-2.
map
They
polls
played
real
them
quick.
recently, right? They played them recently and it's a Paris 3-2.
Yeah. Like let's even just go through their map pool real quick. Obviously, Toronto 4-1 in control, Paris 1-4. Chalk that up. It's 1 for Toronto, right? On the hardpoint side, Paris is 2-1 on Tuscan. Toronto is 1-2. I bet you Tuscan gets through because I bet you Toronto gets rid of probably Gavutu. Or Paris probably gets rid of Gavutu. Toronto probably gets rid of Berlin because that's the most played map by Paris. It would probably be Tuscan Bocage. And I actually think Paris is probably favored in both of those. So then it comes down to an S&D, which Paris 2-0 on Tuscan, Toronto 0-1 on Tuscan. So I can see a world where this actually goes 3-1 Paris, right? Am I crazy?
Yeah, baby. Paris 3-1. Or Paris 3-2.
So you guys have both picked Paris. So that's it.
Yeah. It's it. It's chalked. Kleenex is over.
Wow.
As is Cammy for me.
I have Kleenex on my team too. I want Kleenex to make a run, but map pool wise,
Paris top 6, baby. Let's go.
Paris could actually find some form in this if they get the right maps. If they could start getting thrown on their bad maps like Siege, like get Siege out of there. Don't let Toronto play you on Siege because that would just be a mess. But if they can get on like Tuscan, I could see a world where I mean I could see a world where Donnie's carrying the squad to a losers round 3 here.
Let's go,
Yeah, that's
baby.
fine. I mean, I would have had Toronto winning, but that's okay. I think they always pick it up at the major. Regardless, last tournament we talked about it. They couldn't win a hard point, but they still finished top 4. I think they're going to play average again and finish top 6, but clearly not. We're going with Paris Legion. So New
Sorry.
York.
With Paris Legion, baby. We'd love to see it. Okay, the other side of losers. New York versus Seattle. To me, I think that New York, if they win against Thieves as they have done, I think they come in here and handle business. I think honestly, right now, I'd probably put them above Surge in my power rankings just because I think their respawn play is just better. Surge are bit suspect. I think Crim can help get the best out of these boys on LAN, especially after a couple of series under their belt with this new environment. And, you know, they're probably going to have the crowd behind them. It's going to be an entertaining affair. So I'm taking New York probably 3-1 again. I think I'm just confident in their hard points right now.
Can I go?
Yeah.
I can go.
I want to pick Seattle Surge for 2 reasons. I want it to be a tiebreaker for Austin, but also I think that their slaying and hardpoint when they're firing and they've got the maps that they enjoy, I think that they can compete, if not be better than New York. And New York's hardpoint is their strongest mode right now. So I see Seattle competing with them in hardpoint and winning the series 3-1 with winning both hardpoints.
Wow.
What team was
So
Lamar on
awesome.
last year?
He was on ROKKR.
He was on the Minnesota ROKKR, right? So he might have some fans still rooting for them, him and the boys over there. And I feel like, you know, Pred and Sib and Mac have been, you know, fan favorites. I personally think Seattle can win this. I feel like Seattle will match them well in hardpoint, and I feel like Seattle is the better team in control. So control is usually that tiebreaker mode for me. If Seattle can win the probably the map 2 and then win the map 3, I definitely think they can take this. So I'm gonna go Seattle 3-2, probably going down to a map 5.
Fair enough. That's sad, but I can accept the being overruled on this occasion. I've still got New York top 4 though, so don't you guys forget that. On my bracket, I've got them beating Surge and then Boston, but that's fine. We'll go back to winners. Which one do we want to tackle first? Let's do Ravens Breach first, because they just played. To me, I think that Boston have been, of the 2, shakier on LAN. Like, yes, Gizmo didn't have the greatest time on LAN before, but we know like he was going through some stuff behind the scenes. And Boston last time on LAN were pretty shaky. Yes, they've looked a lot better, but I actually think when you look at who Boston played and beat, I'm not that impressed with that many of their wins. And I think they got somewhat categorically outplayed by London. It was a close series, but I felt like London just had that extra step. And I think generally they have the extra step across the board. And also London being the highest seed here, I guess they have control choice advantage and they can get away from Tuscan that they don't like and play Gavutu. And Boston are crap at Gavutu. And therefore, London are great at Gavutu. So that's a free W on the control. I've probably jinxed it there. But like 90% chance that they win the Gavutu control in this series because they're going to pick it. And therefore, that already gives London a 1-0. So London win this one 3-1 again. But I've got London again.
You want to go Austin or me?
You can go.
Yeah, I agree. But I can imagine a world where Boston get it done. Obviously, these 2 teams are really close.
It was a world.
Yeah. And it's a fight for that top 3 spot, and I can see it. So I will go with Boston just because I'm really high on Zinni right now. I think that he's been playing probably the best as an AR this whole stage outside maybe Dashy, but he's more of a flex role. But I can imagine they get through. I think game 5, Boston win it. They lose their control for sure, but I think that they win the second hard point and then the game 5.
So I actually have London winning.
Come on, can't be ruining this bracket, man.
Yeah, I'm sorry, but I have a lot of faith in Afro and Nasty and Gizmo and Trey leading them. I know Giz had a really tough major 1. Obviously, he had a lot of stuff going on. I do put a lot of stock in how he's performed since then. He has been really good. Nasty's been way above expectations, and Afro and Trey are just doing what people expected, like amazing things. So, I still think London clear-cut number 3 team in the game, and yeah, so I have them making it to the winners finals.
And they will play the winner of OpTic and FaZe. Again, we get another beautiful rematch of these 2. Look, OpTic so far are 3-0 against FaZe. One of the series has a pretty big asterisk. FaZe got close. The very exciting thing to me about this kind of proper rematch is that FaZe's hardpoint has looked great, and it's the respawns where you guys fell short last time. As in the grand finals, you won the searches, lost all the respawns. That was the downfall. I think this is another game 5. I actually just think, but I'm really impressed with OpTic's clutch factor lately. I think there's actually a very reasonable chance FaZe get this done. OpTic have kind of the pressure of, can we get over the streak? FaZe would come in here very much looking for revenge. But there's something about OpTic right now that makes me think that put them in a clutch situation, put them in a game 5. They know that they can do it. They've done it before. They've won many game 5s, many round 11s this season, way more than they ever have in previous seasons. So to me, I'm taking OpTic 3-2, like a 6-4 game 5 or something.
You go, Austin.
Oh, I'm obviously gonna have my team. That's where I'm at. I feel like this series is a little bit different than the last time we played, because I feel like OpTic had the clear cut advantage in those matchups on the respawns. I mean, obviously we could have won a couple more maps, but right now I feel like we kind of flipped to where I think we are at least margin. Like, I'm talking small margins here. I feel like we're the better hardpoint team. They probably got us right now in a little bit more on the form of the S&D, and then I feel extremely confident in the control. Like, I feel like the ticks change. It benefits us a lot. It's literally, you're playing way more like last year's style control than the kill heavy version. So yeah,
It's gonna be
that's just
interesting
why.
because it's probably going to be Tuscan, right? Like,
I would say
OpTic would probably
Kavutu.
pick Tuscan. You reckon? Actually, no, that's probably true. Yeah, they'd probably pick Kavutu.
I think they pick Kavutu, but I know our maps show that we're terrific at Kavutu.
Should have beaten
but
them though in the grand finals with the whole, RCGs
coulda,
thing.
shoulda, woulda. But my thing is that if you look at both of those, or actually all 3 of the controls that we played, I'm pretty sure we're very good on the tick side of things, but we were just horrible on the life types of things. We would have had round 5 defense on at least, I think, 2 of those games, so it would have been different. So I think like this is going to be battle of the heavyweights. It's going to be really close no matter what it is. But obviously I'm going to ride or die with my team. So Lion, have fun breaking this one up.
Before Lion goes, it would be pretty baller if OpTic at this point would be on a 13 win streak. This is to beat FaZe's series record. And at that point, if they beat Surge and Control, they'll also be on like a 15 control win streak. Be pretty baller if FaZe break OpTic's control win streak to also prevent them beating their own series win streak. But anything's possible with these guys. Lion, off you go.
I agree. I think that would be insane from FaZe, but I don't see it happening. I see FaZe finding. Well, I think that how FaZe were always like OpTic's mental like wall last year. I think that is the same situation but flipped this year. Sorry to say it, Austin, but I think that you guys might start feeling the pressure from OpTic. And
Rambo's in your head, Austin.
Yeah, and I'm getting them in your head just for the boys, So I can see them beating you guys quite comfortably. Let's say a 3-0. Hey, Austin.
Let me just say this.
Yeah.
When I go to LAN events, we are 2-0 and
Oh,
undefeated.
no. Wow.
Shit.
When I don't go to LAN events, we don't have the same win percentage. So
I see. Huh.
just so everyone knows, I will be in attendance.
So you're going to go from 100% to 66.7%.
Oh, come on.
I see how it is. That's cool then. That's cool. Okay. Well, anyway, we've got OpTic winning. Let's head back down to losers. We'll do the bottom side. Boston versus Surge. We've got here. Tough, because if it was New York, I would have taken them here. But I think that Boston are the better team. I think at this point, having played 2 series, they're going to get comfortable enough on LAN to get the job done. I just honestly have, I don't know, right now I have more faith in the Boston rookies than I do in the Seattle rookies on a consistent basis, which surprises me to say after the way the start of the season went. But I think I'm going to take Boston here actually because I had like one of Boston or New York getting top 4 this event. So I'm going to stick with my guns on that one and say Boston yeah, give them a 3-1. I'll have a 3-1. You guys know.
Who you got,
Yeah.
Lion?
Yeah, I also have Boston in the series. I just think on LAN, I can imagine that Seattle will have, like I thought last time, like an extra flame. These guys, they are really, when they have hype behind them, they seem to have a lot of momentum. But Boston have just been looking a little bit more fundamentally sound for the last, well, I guess since the start of the year. And so I think in those crunch moments, they're going to be a little bit more prolific. And I see them winning Game 5, 3-2 to Boston.
Yeah, I see it the same way. This Boston team has been can you believe this team was the last one to form with the quote unquote scraps, and they look arguably like the best dark horse, like outside the top 3 to win anything. It's honestly amazing.
Shout out Zend and Dens, man.
Yeah, Zed and Dens did a terrific job, scouting talent. Even I had questions going into it. I didn't really think I didn't know what to expect. I thought maybe they were like one roster change away. But all 4 of those guys have been performing above expectations, and honestly, it's pretty mind blowing. This goes to show that you don't have to splash with the flashiest of free agent signings as long as you develop a good team chem, develop a good philosophy of how you want to play certain game modes, and yeah, shout out to them. They've just been utterly terrific. It's just unbelievable, honestly, the consistency they've had the last two stages.
Yeah, I just wanted to add with Boston. I feel like every year there's one of those teams that's a surprise, really good, solid team, and that's Boston this year. And I think that's just because every year the teams make their roster based on the previous year and don't really think about what the team could look like the following year on a completely different game. And so like these surprise teams like slip in, and Boston for me is that team this year, maybe London as well.
Agreed. Okay, so FaZe Paris on the other side. Unfortunately to say, I think this is where Paris's run comes to an end. I can't see them taking down FaZe. It's going to be a hot 3-0. Actually, maybe not. FaZe, what did they do before? They went down to losers in the same situation. They reverse swept Thieves, and then they 3-0'd everyone. Damn, I already want to put FaZe in. Not confirmed, even though, what Austin's going to say. Yeah, I don't know. FaZe 3-1. I want to give Paris their respect and say Donnie's Temp's going to go rogue and win them a map.
Donnie Temp is not beating FaZe in a map by himself. It's not happening. It's a
3-0 FaZe. Austin's going to say 3-0 Paris.
Nah, it's going to be a 3-2 hard-fought battle. Tom Gravity and the boys. But no, it's going to be close. I don't... Any matchup, any team that you play against is going to be hard. Obviously, I think we have the advantages. But you never know. I would say 3-1 conservative. Obviously, really conservative. But losers round 3, that would still be Saturday. It would be Saturday night. Yeah, so... They might catch us because obviously in this bracket we would be losing against Texas, then having to play that extra game. So might be one map we drop here or there, but yeah.
Okay, let's do the losers finals or losers semi-finals. This is for top 3. Loser of this gets top 4. To me, once FaZe start to make a run, they continue that run. I think Boston can do something here, but I think it's just going to be too much, to be honest, for the Boston guys. FaZe, after a hot of a series win, they're going to play... Actually, this will be a Sunday match, won't it? So it gets pretty interesting, but to me, FaZe are too good in situations like this. I think that there's a gap to me between... OpTic FaZe are pretty close. It's like 1A, 1B, then London, then Boston, and then the rest, I think. To me, I think there's quite a significant gap between the two. There's like an 80% chance FaZe win this. It's a 3-1 fashion, ladies and gentlemen.
Bro, we're the fifth seed. 5th versus 3rd. We're the underdogs here.
That's true, actually. They're going to smoke you in the control. They're going to pick Tuscan, but you're really good at Tuscan. The issue is they can't play Gavutu against you. That's the problem here for them. Because they want to pick... Actually, will they... I guess that because they have the higher seed, they will be...
Oh, yeah, they have the pick.
They will get a pick, yeah. But like, if you're Boston, you're in a really tough spot because your worst map is Gavutu, as is theirs.
We beat them on Gavutu too.
Yeah. So like they kind of want to pick Tuscan, but you guys, I think you guys are gonna go like undefeated on Tuscan control this event. I don't know. I just think that your team's disgusting at that map.
Bro, we're not gonna see a Tuscan. I don't
Probably not gonna let you up on.
because New
You
York's
will go
probably gonna do
undefeated because
Gavutu.
no one
Texas will probably
plays
do
it against you.
Gavutu. If we play London in the winners finals, we do make it there. Then London's picking Gavutu. Boston's probably gonna say, "Fuck it, this is gonna be your first Tuscan you'd see." I think. So.
Yeah, but
3-1.
you obviously have you guys winning, so that means that they're going through. But
Congratulations.
I can't see Boston winning that series either. I think FaZe is just too much, and if they're in this stage of the tournament, they're getting dangerous.
Yeah, exactly.
Harder to beat the longer the tournament goes on.
This is Sunday morning too, right?
Yeah, Sunday morning, I think.
This is the Toronto special where you wake up on Sunday and do a 3 games in a row.
You wake up demon mode and you just go for it, yeah. I also think with Boston, they came top 6 last tourney. I think in their head they'll be like, wow, top 4, that's a great result. Like going into this series in this situation, they'll already be thinking like, wow, top 4, like, great job, lads. Like that's improvement. We're stepping up. We proved we could do it on LAN. And if you take that mindset into a series against FaZe, you're getting smoked. So, winners finals, OpTic London. Again, as I say, we've got the tiers of teams. To me, this is quite interesting. When's the last time? I guess these two guys played in the finals, in the winners finals last time, right? I must be tripping. The only time before that was in Major 1 qualifiers when London beat them Game 5 round 11 with the reverse sweep, I think it was. But yeah, OpTic beat them kind of resoundingly before. I think the concern here to me is that London just don't... I don't think the map pools work out well enough in London's favour in a series like this. And I don't know. I think that they can, again, be competitive and probably win a map. But to me, I think London I think they're going to be very close to FaZe. I think we're going to take OpTic to win this one, and they're going to play FaZe, and I'm going to have a different prediction for that one. But I think that against OpTic, especially when you look at the controls, it just seems very difficult for me to imagine them winning, especially because OpTic get to pick what control they want to play here, and OpTic are going to probably pick a Tuscan control where London have very much struggled. Zero says he's a walking 0.3 on that map. That's like a running joke in the team. They lost it to Boston. So the thing is, if you're losing the control to OpTic, it's just so hard to win the rest. So
And
unfortunately,
honestly,
I'm going to take OpTic to win this 3-1.
you're not going to see a Berlin in this series. Berlin's just going to be out for both Hardpoint and
Yeah,
SD. Those are both
yeah.
the London's best maps. So I don't think the other map pools of the remaining 6 maps in Hardpoint and SD, those all favor OpTic in my opinion. So it's a tough match. I would go OpTic as well, probably in a 3-1 fashion. I would say London probably splits a Hardpoint. I would guess I would say they probably get a bow cage out of that. And I feel like they can win that. So I would say they probably lose a Gavutu and win a bow cage. So I'll give them 3-1.
OpTic in the finals again.
I would love to see London win the series because then it would make it 3 teams all fighting for that number 1 spot, and that would be extremely exciting. But I don't see it again. I think FaZe, not FaZe, OpTic are just too strong against any other competition other than FaZe, and even FaZe they're strong. So I see that OpTic going through.
Okay, losers finals. This is where I'm going rogue. I don't have a great rhyme or reason to this pick, but I can't be asked picking another OpTic FaZe finals, so I'm going different. I'm saying that London this time are finally going to get over the hump of beating one of the top 2. If it's going to happen, it's going to happen in a game 5. But I think that London have what it takes to get there. Like at this point, London are the higher seed. They can probably pick a Gavutu where FaZe are good, but I think London are very good at that map. So I think that there's a decent chance that London win the Gavutu. And if they win a Gavutu control, they can certainly take this series to game 5. And I think FaZe have been suspect in game 5, personally, as of late. So I think the Ravens, I want to say this is like a 40% chance they do it, but sometimes these things happen, that they're going to take FaZe the distance and beat them 3-2. I think it's going to be a big turning point for London. in their own heads, because I think they know right now they're a top 3 team, but they're looking to be number 1. They have that mindset. It's impressive. Like, they're not satisfied with being top 3. I think a lot of people in their position, new to the league, would be satisfied with like, wow, we're top 3 behind OpTic and FaZe. Let's just consolidate. They've got the mindset that they want to beat a team like this. And the crowd is going to be a very interesting factor here as well, I think, because, like, you know, the crowd probably doesn't want to see OpTic FaZe, because the crowd will be, it's Minnesota, but it's OpTic, right? That's always how it is, no matter where they go. And the crowd knows that if there's one team that can beat OpTic in the grand finals, it's FaZe. So they're going to be rooting for London this series, if this series happens, of course. The bracket could be very different. But I'm taking London 3-2. We'll go to Austin next.
Okay.
I obviously, you got to think about it. The way I think about it is we're going to be coming on a 1-game winning streak coming into this. So that's like more of an advantage, because we're probably coming in like really hot, and they probably, I'm guessing, probably would have warmed up against OpTic, if I had to guess, going into this. So I still have it 3-1. I think those look at the same map pool treatment, like no Berlin. Those are two, obviously, of London's best maps. When you look at the remaining maps in London's map pool, they like Gavutu hardpoint, and they like Tuscan hardpoint, which falls into our map pool kind of. And yeah, they'll probably get to pick the control, which would be Gavutu, but in the S&D, I don't know. I would say 3-2, but I just think coming into on a win, it's going to be kind of like one of those things where you catch a high going into it. So that's where I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go 3-2 us in that.
You guys did it before in a very similar bracket.
Mm-hmm.
The last major, when they played in this matchup, when it loses final, it was extremely close series, but it wasn't was it a 3-0 or 3-1? Do you remember?
When we played them, 3-1.
Yeah, was it a 3-0? 3-1.
It's a 3-1. You got 5-1 comeback on the search, right?
3-1 both times, actually.
Yeah, but all the maps seem to be extremely close when you guys play. It's quite a contested series, regardless of the scoreline. But I agree with you, Austin. I think that the fact that you guys are coming off 2 wins in losers bracket, you did this last time as well. I see you guys making a run straight back to the finals, honestly.
No.
3-2. I'm sorry, Rab. I'm not going with London this time. They let me down last major. I picked them to win.
I do hate it,
Fair enough.
because like it could obviously, I don't want it to seem like it's just a foregone conclusion that it's going to be our 2 teams in the finals.
I
do think that there is a world, where London or even Boston, or even like a New York could definitely make a run in. It's definitely not cemented as a OpTic Atlanta finals. You obviously have to play multiple matches to get there, and anything can happen. So yeah, even though it's still OpTic FaZe in our bracket, don't feel too like terrified to not watch any games up until Sunday, because it could be pretty crazy.
Yeah, I think the bracket doesn't tell the whole story here. Like, a lot of these series, we've been kind of split on contested opinions. That's why you got to watch the whole thing, baby. Don't just look at the bracket. Okay, we've got to pick the finals. It's OpTic FaZe again. OpTic have the huge veto advantage in this one, which is absolutely immense coming from the winners bracket. I think this series is going to be closer than it was before. Honestly, last time I also felt it was very close for the 5-2 scoreline it was. It could have very much gone either way. And I think here FaZe are going to win at least some of the respawns. And in this case, would be on a pretty hot streak coming out of losers. I still believe right now, especially with the crowd behind them, that OpTic have too much. At this point, OpTic are going to be full of confidence. And I honestly think that if this is how the bracket plays out and FaZe have lost to OpTic winners round 2, there will be something in their heads that just says, like, we can't beat this team. Especially if they lose, like, a tough, close map or something. There's always that mental warfare going on. So if the bracket plays out like this, and OpTic start off strong as they did before, I think I've got OpTic 5-3. If it goes game 9, though, like, wow, that's like an absolute blender, because that really shows like who's got the ice. And both of these teams are working very hard on their map pool. I think that's what's going to make this series very interesting. There's going to be, like, OpTic, I believe they've kind of hinted that they have some secret stuff on Desert Siege and maybe even Berlin Hardpoint, some ideas that they haven't brought out yet. maybe saving them for moments like this in a big grand finals. So who knows, right? Maybe they've discovered some more things on Search and Destroy. It's tough to really predict OpTic going back to back because they haven't done that, but I think they're favourites to do it. And I think if these are the grand finals, they've got a very good chance. I think a lot of the factors that played in their favour Major 1 still play in their favour. It's like a 60-40 to me, but I think I'm going to say OpTic like 5-3. Go to Austin.
I'll say 5 for us. I think, quite honestly, I bet you we'll split the controls. I think we'll have a 2-1 advantage in the hard points. So we'll bring in 3-2, and then I feel like we'll split the 4 S&Ds. I feel like Berlin Bow Cage could go either way. I really feel strong about our Desert Siege and our Tuscan. Ever since we got our ass whooped by, I think, what was it, Thieves, and then OpTic as well. We've been trying a bunch of new things. Obviously, practice. We've been S&D practice. Honestly, has been way more frequent this year for all teams. Like obviously, our team last year did a lot of S&D practice, but for all teams, S&D practice has been way more frequent. So you're seeing a higher level of S&D. You're seeing a lot of people play in S&D 8s with POC, and you're seeing a lot of that. So I'll say we split S&Ds 2-2. I bet you Desert Siege is going to be a map 9. So I'll say 5 for us.
Man, that would be a banger.
So
there you
I'm
go,
off on
Lion.
the-
You've got to decide the tournament.
I decide the breaking point predictions.
The pressure's on.
Break my heart, Lion.
Everyone knows that I don't know if everyone knows this. Why would they? I'm an OpTic fan. And I see them playing well.
Wow,
But-
that's a hot take from you.
Thanks, man. I don't know how to feel about this series because last time it was extremely close, but OpTic managed to ice out all of the respawns. They didn't lose a respawn.
Yeah, they didn't lose a respawn.
And also FaZe coming in with Simp being a little bit ill last week, maybe a bit of issues in practice there for a day or two.
Interesting.
I don't know. This is 50-50 for me. I think it will be for like the entirety of the season. I'm gonna go Atlanta FaZe.
Wow.
5-3.
Breaking the 15 win streak of OpTic.
Yeah.
Oh, sweet Jesus. That would be a 15 by then, huh?
I didn't want to do that at all. That goes against everything I feel in Call of Duty. But I
actually think that there's a decent chance of this, though. Like,
oh, of course. I think
it's so tough. It's so tough to call, man. It's so tough to call. FaZe are just a team that can do this.
Yeah, OpTic obviously at that point would have had, 15 wins, eh?
There'd be 15 in a row on our bracket.
I think there's no way OpTic go undefeated for the rest of time. So I think eventually they're going to lose a series. And I think that will be the series they lose. Yeah. It's hard for me to say.
I actually kind of like that, though, because I was looking at FaZe's win streak and like they were on a crazy run of like 3-0, 3-1, 3-0. And then they got to the grand finals against Dallas and went game 9 and almost lost. So it's like, I wouldn't be surprised if something similar happens where they're on like a super hot streak and then they come up against, it's like, you know, unstoppable force meets the movable object type stuff.
Yeah.
We just had a terrific bracket segment. Would have been perfect for YouTube. And then you just got to ruin it. Now we can't post it because now the OpTic fans are going to hate you. Unbelievable. And you jinxed me.
Run it back.
Yeah, that's what I'm doing.
I like that, though, because the thumbnail, we still put OpTic 1 FaZe 2. And then they get to this point and they think, bloody hell, they've debated us. Lions baited us the whole way. But I like this bracket. It's a good mix of some hot takes in there. Given that we had FaZe beating London, I feel like we had to go for a nice little hot one in the finals as well.
Paris Legion top 6.
I like that one. You know, my bracket, I would have had New York top 4 instead of Boston, but that's acceptable what we did. I think, honestly, there isn't really anything I would change apart from that.
Yeah.
So,
amazing.
Unbelievable stuff. But yeah, well done, everyone. Thanks all for watching. Honestly, I think we can close it up there. We've covered everything we wanted to cover. Hey, Austin's done it. Let's go. It's like the Ben putt to close out the show. Austin's got to hit Austin's got to hit one of those. So yes, thanks all for watching live at the present time here on Twitch or after the fact on YouTube or all the other podcast platforms. Fantastic show. I don't know if we hit the highest ever concurrent viewers we've ever had, but that's likely. Omar, I don't know if you
record
want to find someone to raid, but we absolutely shattered some records today. Everyone's sitting here in the chat. We had over 400 at some point, which is out of control. Yeah, thanks for all the love. And yes, that's our predictions for the major. Lots of talking points. It's only going to get more spicy as time progresses because we've got crazy matches. And honestly, as soon as the major ends, there's going to be a fair amount of teams that want to make moves, I would imagine, because some teams aren't going to get the result they're looking for. And if you're failing at back-to-back majors, we kind of called this going into the season. If you choke, or if you don't choke, but let's say you place top 6 or worse at 2 back-to-back majors and you're a team that's looking to win championships, you know, that's not going to cut it right, especially when changes are being made around the scenes. Austin, you're flying out this evening. Best of luck. Lions predicted you to win, so the pressure's on. Your 100% win record is on the line.
Yeah, but actually, guys, next week, same time, same place. It's gonna be the spiciest probably podcast we've had because Major 2, and then heading into probably the biggest roster period we're gonna have during the season. So I'm actually more excited for next week's podcast than anything. Like, I hope you guys enjoy the Major 2. Minnesota's gonna put on a show. As CDL has been honestly killing the broadcast lately. It's been getting tremendous support, and it's been rubbing off on us. So yeah, thanks everyone for the immense support. You know, Lion put out a swaggy graphic the other day showing how much support we've been getting on our YouTube.
Nice graphic.
It's been amazing. We love you guys.
Ditto. I agree. If someone is going to the event that's in the chat, if FaZe win, find Easy Mac and spray him with water. For me.
Now for that. And record it, chuck it up on Twitter. He'll go in a video.
I'll let one person just so you can tag Lion.
Yeah, man. Please. If you can get a whole team together to do it, that would be great. And I hope to see that.
Okay.
Unbelievable.
Fantastic work, everyone. We're going to, I believe, raid Slacked. So Omar's going to do that in a second. It might have already happened. Thanks for watching as always. Take care of yourselves. And we'll see you next time.